This is Layla Ewan talking with Jerry Thompson today at Hull Heritage Fisheries Centre on the 11th of March 2025, and the conversation is being recorded on behalf of Seen But Not Heard. So Jerry, just wanted to start off with, can you tell me a bit about your early life?
Right, I was born into a fishing family. I had two brothers at sea. My granddad was lost at sea in the ship called Lockhart in 1934. I've just had the family tree done, and lo and behold, a total of 5 members of my fishing family was lost at sea on the trawlers. The Poundsburys, the Kellets, the Porters, Tom Wilson, my granddad, and I've lost a lot of friends as well. From an early age, with my 2 brothers being at sea, I used to see every trip when they came home. The suits they wore, the nice shirts, shoes, fisherman suits, and a girl on each arm and a pocket full of money, and that's what I was brought up to want. Mm-hmm. And obviously, they used to bring us gifts home from sea and what have you. So, I was well looked after as a child. And when I was 15, I had an opportunity to sail with a relation of mine. I was still at school. It was Easter 1971, and I went on a pleasure trip on the Kingston Almondine, the Skipper's Jack trip, family relation. He lived out at Withersea, and it was 3 weeks of absolute adventure for a young lad like myself, and it put me in good stead for leaving school the following summer. 2 weeks after leaving school, I signed on the Hull trawler Rossaquilla. Now, my mother always had superstitions about fishing because she lost her father, Tom Wilson, when she was 13. Left behind was my mother at 13, a sister who was 10, Alice, and a mother, Alice. And I do know from what my mum told me before she died that for 6 weeks I lived on the lock gates in a wooden hut, waiting on every tide, waiting to see if the Lockhart came back. There was no radios in them days, and it was all word of mouth. Have you seen the Lockhart? Have you seen the Lockhart? So one day in late March 1934, the mission man told them, look, you've got to go home. There's no hope for your dad. And, it must have been a terrible time because I was left destitute. All fishermen in them days, and even in the 70s and 80s, you lived trip to trip because you could go away for 3 weeks and you could come home with nothing. You could own all the company money. As I say, my mum had her superstitions. I remember that morning I was sailing at 2 o'clock in the morning in the Rossaquilla. I was 16, just left school 2 weeks. And I remember walking up and down my mum's front window, waiting for the taxi to arrive. And I've always said this, walking from my mum's house to the taxi is about 40 yards. It's a big green grass area. And I left that house as a boy. When I climbed in that taxi, I became a man. Now the reason I say that is because, fishermen lived hard and, in life. And for the 3 days I was at home, sometimes it was a complete blur. You was drinking at 24/7 sort of things. And the beer was a big part of it. And I got in this taxi with 3 drunken fishermen, and then when we went down the dock, eventually went through the stores, you can buy gloves and that, which you had to buy for yourself in them days. This is why you could come home and owe the company money. And then when I got aboard, I remember being on the ship and thinking, good God, I was frightened for once. I was on my own, when I was pleasuring, my uncle was skipper of the ship, but all of a sudden I'm just an ordinary crew member at the age of 16. And I actually thought, right, Jerry, get off the ship and go. I saw some bike sheds on the dockside, and I thought, right, Jerry, sneak off, get hid, because I was frightened for once. And then I thought of my mother, and that frightened me even more, so I stayed. And, you know, I didn't want to let my mum down, because, you know, although she didn't want David or Raymond to go to see, let alone myself, you know, I didn't want to go back to my mum's. If I'd have gone back to my mum's, I will say this, when my mum used to see me, David or Raymond away, she'd kiss us at the door, and she'd watch till the taxi drove out of sight, but she would never lock that door that night. That door was left unlocked. Mm-hmm. It was, my mum didn't want to turn the key as though she's locking us out, do you understand? And she'd lock it the next night probably, and today, in today's society, you couldn't do that. And I had a slow start, shall we say. I went in the the Rossaquilla. Then I went in the Arctic Corsair, which is now a museum ship in Hull. And I ended up doing a trip in the trawler called the Arctic Warrior. And I'll be quite honest with you, I was glad to run off it.
Could you tell me a little bit about your mum's house?
My mum's house, yes. We lived... my mum's house when she was... my mum lived down Campbell Street when she had David and Raymond. And would you believe, one early morning, the house caught fire. And our David and Raymond was thrown from the bedroom window because the ground floor was on fire. And then my mum moved into Russell Place, which is in the town, and that's where I was born. Otherwise, I would have been born on Hesle Road. So, you know, I haven't got that distinction where I can say, you know, I was born on Hesle Road. I've got the blood in me, Hesle Road, you know, blood and what have you, which is very proud for a lot of us. But I was actually born in the town. And then when they started demolishing Hull, Hesle Road, all the estates was being built in Hull, we had an opportunity to move out there to one of the estates, but my mum went knocking on doors in the local area, and a woman in St Paul Street says she wanted one of the houses on the estate, so we moved into her house and she got an house on the estates opposite a pub, would you believe, which came in very handy. East Riding pub. But yeah, my mum was a grafter all her life. She was worked in a bomb factory in Coventry in the war as a young girl. I've got some photographs of her with a uniform. And, you know, she actually saw the hardship of, you know, losing in 1934 Dad, because there was no social security, there was nobody to help in them days. And I've got a newspaper cutting where they bumped into my grandma, and she said they left destitute and all like that. My mum kept a lovely house, you know. She was a very proud woman, and sadly she died early. She died young in 1979, and she wanted to be buried with her dad at Iceland. Now, a couple of weeks ago, one of the Bartle family, was lost in 1925. So they've just celebrated 100 years, and they went to Iceland, and we had a service here for them. That the women stayed here, and the men went to Iceland because he's buried out there, is Mr. Bartle. And they came home with a map, and it's the first time ever we've seen where my granddad's ship sank. I wish I'd have known this in the 70s, because I fished in that area, and you know, because when you lose somebody at sea, you haven't got a grave, and to know that now we know where he is, I want to go on a cruise around Iceland to lay reef, because I've been up to northern Norway, which I'll tell you about the Ian Fleming shortly, the ship I was on, what sank, and it'd have been a nice comfort for the family, because, you know, when you lose somebody at sea, this is what we've campaigned for all these years, that you ain't got a grave, nowhere to go lay flowers, and we didn't have it for long enough in this city, and it wasn't the right thing, because we lost 913 ships from this port in 150 years, 6,000 trawlermen. The sacrifice we give to the country has never been recognised, for what we did. And, as I say, I lost 5 members at sea, and I lost 2 or 3 down Manchester Street in an air raid in the war. Same family.
And thinking about how precarious life was, how do you think that impacted on the social life when you were back in Hull?
Well, this is the thing. I've sailed on a trawler and I've seen somebody get their arm ripped off. And, you worked hard and you lived hard. And this is how it was. The relief to have a drink when you came home. Because, even if you took some cans away with you, it didn't last long. And then I've been away 119 days on one ship. It's 3 months. And it's terrible when, on a Saturday night when you're up in the Arctic in bad weather and you think everybody's at home enjoying themselves. So when you did come home, you didn't have to get up for work. You had, you could have 3 days at home or 2 weeks, depending if you was on a sidewinder or a trawler. And it was a free-for-all, parties. Don't forget you had friends coming home day after day and you'd meet them in the pub. So the nightlife was, I've always said this, we've got photographs. Every night was a Saturday night, because you had 100 people, 3, to 3, maybe 5 ships landing every day. And then you had all these fishermen out in the clubs. So, in today's society where you don't see nobody in a pub on a Monday night, in them days, every night was a Saturday night. Because you took family and friends out. You didn't only just go out with you and your wife and all the crews and all their friends, and then, your fellow fisherman was always in the pub. And that was the social life in Hull, that it all revolved around, especially this place, the community, the Ezel Road community. You didn't have to walk more than 10 yards and there was a pub. It was crazy. And I do remember in the 70s, this is, I was in the town, we used to use a lot of pubs in the town as well. And I remember walking past a big store there called Epworth's near the City Hall. And I'd had a good drink that day. And as I'm walking by, the trip before this happened, we had a film aboard the ship called the Great Gatsby. Now, a lot of the trawler suits, double-breasted and all like that, I saw all them, fishermen used to wear them with the half-moon pockets, the pleats in the back, the big belts. We've done projects here on suits. We can't find one at the moment because they've all been destroyed years ago. When I was walking past this Epworth's, when I was in the Seafridge Petrol, I had £1,000. It was 1974. £1,000 in 1974 was crazy money. I bought an house that year down Rugby Street, and the house cost me £650. But I had £1,000 settlings after 3 months away. And I went in the shop drunk, and as I said, there was a yellow suit, a red suit, and a green suit, and it was all based off the Teddy Boys. But I ordered a made-to-measure suit in green, a Gatsby suit. And obviously, a couple of days later, I went away. I'd paid for it there and then, and I asked my dad, will you pick it up for us while I was away? My dad went to pick it up, and he got some right funny looks in the tailors when he was picking it up. Anyhow, I got home, and this suit, it was smart. I love shirts and suits. And I remember going down dock in this suit, and the lads was all taking the mickey, calling me Robin Hood and all like that. And I remember walking in one of the fishermen's pubs, St Andrew's Club, named after the patron fisherman. I didn't know at the time, my older sister Carol, was seeing a fisherman. I'd been away at 3 months. And I didn't know, as you went into St Andrew's Club, there was a telephone kiosk there, in the entrance. And I didn't know this, but my sister obviously told me later that I walked in the pub with a couple of friends, and this fisherman's on the phone to my sister. And he said, "You're not going to believe this. You want to see this idiot who just walked in a green suit?" She said, "I know it's my brother." So, Yeah, I've got photographs at the bottom. Yeah. The jacket got destroyed. The dog at home went and chewed a collar at the corner of it, and it was destroyed. But in them early days, a pub was the place to be.
Mm-hmm.
You had nothing else to do.
And did all of your friends, was it a thing to get dressed up?
Oh yeah. I've always loved shirts, and I've smart. And as I say, David, my brother, he was married in 1970, I believe. And even as a school child, I borrowed his suit to go to the wedding, and I've got photographs of that. And I do remember going to school in this fisherman's suit a couple of days before I left school, because when we'd been pleasuring before leaving school, I knew where my destiny was. I knew I had a job to go to. Well, most people did in 1971 in Hull, because everybody was involved with the fishing industry in Hull. Mm-hmm. And as I say, 2 weeks, I had to do a bit of training when I left school down at the Nautical College here, and then I was away within 2 weeks of leaving school. Mm-hmm. And life was good so long as you was in a good ship. As I said, I went in the Arctic Warrior and I ran off it. It was a very bad trip. She was an old ship, and then I signed on I went in. There was a pull down the dock where, they had 10 galley boys there, and then number 3 had become number 2, then number 1, maybe in the same day. So I was on this bench for about four days, and then the guy behind the counter said, "Jerry, you're going in the trawler called the Somerset Moon." Now then, in today's society, that's like winning the lottery. The top skippers was in that ship. She's noticed she won the Silver Cod and the Challenge Shield. So I went galley boying with Dickie Taylor in the Somerset Moon. I did a dozen trips, and then after Christmas, Dickie Taylor said he's taking the CS Forester, which was another step up. You don't get these opportunities a lot on trawlers. And then later on in life, I sailed in the Hammond Innies with Billy Brettle. But I will say, in the October of 73, I was at Nautical College for my spare hands ticket. I was 17 and a half. I had the world at my feet. I was keen to get on and what have you, sitting for these tickets, and I was asked to go away for Christmas 1973, and I signed on. The runner collared me outside the office and said, "Look, come on, Jerry, we've been good to you. We want you to go away in the trawler called Ian Fleming." And so I said, "Aye, okay, my mum wants to, please." It was going to be the first Christmas I'd ever be away from home. And we sailed 3 days before Christmas. The journey up the North Sea was a bit bad weather, and the skipper did say for Christmas Day we would be approaching the top of Norway. He would take her through the Norwegian fjords. We didn't know it was compulsory to go through there without a pilot. He should have picked a pilot up, and he never. And to cut a long story short, at 7:10, sat in the mess deck I was, in a pair of slippers, pair of jeans and a t-shirt. The ship's engines all of a sudden stopped, and we all shouted, "Hey, take her in," as though there was a pub open in northern Norway, on Christmas Day. It's very scarce up there. And we ran aground. We Everson Mountain, about 4 or 5 miles from the North Cape of Norway, and immediately the ship was thrown about like a Coca-Cola tin in water. It was just kicked about. She was on rocks. There was a 400-foot mountain above us. I remember going on the boat deck, and it was sheer panic. I've always looked up to my elders, and to see grown men screaming for their wives and kids, it wasn't a place to be. And then when the ship's lights went out, we could smell diesel, so she'd ruptured her tanks. Obviously the engine room started filling with water. We launched 2 life rafts one midships, that's in the middle of the ship, and one off the stern. I jumped in the one off the stern eventually. It was atrocious in the dark. To miss that life raft, you was dead. Coming up, and the life raft was raising and dropping 15 foot at a time. So eventually got in a life raft, and the one midships overturned with 5 men in it. 3 of them men was killed in the water that night. They died with the cold. They didn't drown. One man got washed back aboard the Fleming, and the skipper was picked up in the water. He was very lucky. With me being at college in the October, I'd just been through a first aid thing and, survival at sea, how to launch a life raft, etc., and let flares off. And that's what I did, although I was the youngest person aboard at 17 and a half. When they said they could see lights, obviously it's people come from other villages. The radio operator sadly lost his life that night in the water. If he hadn't got the Mayday call out, with it being compulsory to have a pilot, nobody knew we was in them waters. We would have all died in that life raft that night through exposure. And I let 6 hand flares off, and these boats eventually could see us, the red flares, and they came to us and rescued us. And I'd lost everything. All my sea gear, a lot of good clothes, suits and whatever. You always went away in a suit. Well, I did. And that sank with the ship. Personal belongings, etc., shirts, everything. And then we was eventually took to hospital in Hammerfest Hospital, and we flew home on the 28th of January. I went out that night into one of the local pubs. It was Scamps. Everybody went in Scamps in them days. It was a brilliant place. Underneath Scamps, it was because Scamps was on the first floor, there was Offenbrau's, a beer cellar. I never have liked them big glasses of beer, No, it's not my thing. I've only been in Offenbrau's once, but my place was Scamps. I remember going in, I knew about the doormen, anyhow, they let me in. And I remember being stood at the bar, and then as I turned, there was a blonde-headed lad running towards me, good-looking little lad and all, Carl Straker, and he was screaming, because he'd been at college with me in the October, and he said, "Come on, all the lads and lasses are in the corner." And we had a great night that night. We went back to a party in Gypsyville, which is at the top of our Ezel Road. And then every day after that, I used to meet Carl in the local pubs round here. Now, I used to come from town down here, and to walk in a pub and then somebody said, "Oh, there's one of the crew there, the Ian Fleming, one of the survivors," it was a free-for-all. Mm-hmm. Fisherman was proud to come across, give us a cuddle. They used to hug you and say, "Right, son, do you want a drink?" Life was like that, because we've seen 6,000 men from Ezel Road die at sea, and they felt proud. I should imagine that they felt proud because they wanted to be a part of you, because they knew what I'd gone through. Mm-hmm. 17 of us survived that night, that disaster. Anyhow, with Carl, I met him every day, and it was every night out all day. It didn't cost me a lot. I was put on survival pay by the company. I could have stayed on for months and months and months. And I had to go to a Board of Trade inquiry because letting the flares off, I was part of the disaster, shall we say. And then when they finished with us on the 5th of January in the centre, it was done at the Board of Trade, I was released. As I say, I was on survival pay, I was on a wage every week. I'd lost all my stuff aboard the Fleming. And then on the 12th of January, I'm on the dock with Carl. Some friends was settling, just come on from thing. And the Amandines, the brand new trawler, Billy Brattle, the ship was sailing, and it was a state-of-the-art trawler in them days. So I said to Carl, we'll go aboard because it's the same company as the Ian Fleming's ship. And then you were a few guys, Kate Bradshaw, who I'd sailed with a lot, he was on it. So I went down, we had a few, sat in his berth, having a few cans. So the dreaded noise, you know, everybody ashore going ashore, the ship's ready for sailing. But the guy who said it shouted, "Oh, the Decalena hasn't turned up." So Kate Bradshaw looked at me and I went, "Don't you dare, don't you dare." Now then, I'd been aboard this trawler, brand new trawler, for half an hour. And when I had a look round, you know, the accommodation, the galley and all, I thought, Jesus, to be in a ship like this must be absolutely brilliant. So, as I said, back down in the berth, Kate pointed at me. "Come on," he said, "follow me." So he goes out the berth, goes up on the deck, and Billy Brettle was stood there, the ship's skipper and the ship's runner. So I'm stood there with my gob open. Kate Bradshaw said to the skipper, "Are you there, skipper?" He said, "The Decalena hasn't turned up, has he?" He went, "No, he hasn't. He needs to get a new company as well," because he had the power to do that, did Bill. He was a top skipper out of all the port. So he said, "Well, Jerry's Decalena, he's just come out the Ian Fleming." So Brettle turned to me and says, "Is that right, Jerry? Are you in the Ian Fleming?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "Do you want to come with us?" So I went, "Yeah." So they arranged, they put me in a taxi. But before I could, as I got back on the quay, I said to Carl, "Come here, see you next trip, mate." Shook his hand. They sent me to stores in a taxi. That was the last I saw Carl. I said, "I'll see you next trip, mate." They put me in a taxi. I went to stores. Insurance paid for all my new clothes, working clothes, so I got all that. Took me to my mother's. I ran in my mother's. My mother didn't know what hit her. I was in the house about 30 seconds. I'm going in the Amandines. I thought I'd won the lottery. Well, I did. It was the ship to be in. You don't get that offer every day. So I was in my mum's house a matter of minutes. I grabbed a load of stuff, some of my brother's stuff, and they took me to pier, and the Amandines was waiting in the river for me. And then we sailed. Now then, in them days, if you caught 2,000 kit, it was a good trip. That trip in the Amandines, we landed 4,499 kit, and we broke the world record. It's in the papers, I've got the cuttings. It was a world record that a ship had caught fish anywhere, and we made £73,500. I remember George Palmer, he picked up £800 odd, and I bought a house that year for 650. So it just shows you in 19 days, you know, a lot of the crew, you know, earns a lot of money. With it being a new trawler, they said when I went down to settle, it took 2 days. A trawler always lands in one night. It took 2 nights to unload her. I went down to settle on the second day. The cameras was there, you know, world record and interviewing people. Apparently I was the highest paid Decalena out of all at the time. And they said, "Oh, you're going to be home 8 or 9 days. You know, with it being a new trawler, they had to strip the engines and, you know, some teething troubles with the ship." So I thought, brilliant, out every day. Anyhow, I remember that was we landed on the 3rd and the 4th of February. I remember on the 9th of February, there was discussions going about the girl. She hadn't radioed in. And, you know, I was one of the biggest critics. "Oh, she'll be all right, a big trawler like that. You know, bad weather, her aerials will be down, etc., etc." Not giving it a second thought. And then things started to get serious. Anyhow, on the 11th or 12th, I was in Scamps on the night. People was talking about it. And I could see a disturbance at the bar. Somebody screaming. And I looked and I could see it was Carl's girlfriend. So I thought, where is he? You know, and I'm looking round in the club. Where is he? So I goes over to her, and there was a kid stood next to her. He was crying as well. and she's screaming, Carl, Carl, Carl. I said, what's going on? What's going on? Where is he? She said, he's in the goal. And my best mate, Carl, who I bumped into that night in Scamps, he once put his arm around me. He said to me, you're my hero, Jerry. You're one of the survivors. I sailed on the 12th in the Amdinnies, as I said, and he sailed on the 21st in the goal, and he was lost. And where we're sat here now, he lived about 20 yards away in Eaton Street, just through there. Yeah, and he lost his life at sea. I think about him a lot because, you know, he's a smart lad. I've got photographs of him, and you know, the nightlife we used to enjoy in Halfway and Rainers in this area. It's nice when you can live in an area like this and have a few pubs around you. You know, he'll always be a part of me. We'll celebrate his life every year with the other 36 crew. You know, there was 36 crew lost. It was the biggest trawler maritime loss ever.
And how do you celebrate that? How do you?
We have outside here, across the road, is the benches dedicated to the skipper and crew, 2 benches, and there's a big planter there where people go put flowers, etc., etc. That's her up there, photograph. Yeah. And that was one of the setbacks. You know, I got over it. It affected me a lot as 17 and a half I was. My Christmases was never the same, especially the first few after that. And, you know, it affected me a lot. I used to hate, and I would never go away for Christmas again. And, you know, it's always the same. At 7:10 every Christmas night, I open a can of beer to the lads. I watch the clock. 5 years ago, before COVID, I had an opportunity to go to Norway on a cruise with my brother and our wives. And I actually went to meet everybody in Honningsvåg in northern Norway who rescued me. And the stories what they was telling us, there was one lady there, she cried all the way through the afternoon. She was a radio operator in Norway, and she received our mayday call from our radio operator. And I met the guy whose boat, he was telling me he was walking back to his house at 7:10 that Christmas night, and somebody shouted to him, there's a ship aground at the other side of the mountain, Aversund. It's got a village near it, but it's about 6 miles to go right round. And he ran to his boat, and the mooring ropes, it was that cold, the weather, the mooring ropes was frozen to the bollards. He had to get an hacksaw and cut his lines to get out the harbour. It was a great celebration, you know, to meet them all still alive after it was 50 years nearly, you know what I mean?
When you then and now, and you've gone to the ports other than Hull,
Yeah.
like Norway or Iceland or whatever, do you see connections between the way people, communities?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, apparently, the Field Marshal Robinson, the boards are outside with all the lost trawlermen on. There was on the Field Marshal Robinson 100 years ago, there was 6 hull crew, but there was 20 odd Icelandic people, and she sank off Iceland. And up and coming, we've got 40 odd skippers coming to see us, Icelandic skippers. So the camaraderie, the respect, although we had the day I left school, we was in the Third Cod War, the industry was, I didn't realise, by 1980 the industry had finished because of the Cod Wars and the restrictions in fishing areas. But yeah, you know, when these other Icelandic skippers came last year, I said to them, can I have my potatoes back? What I throw out your gunboat? Because that's all we had as fishermen. I wasn't going to throw fish at them because, you know, I was trying to land it. But we used to throw anything at them. But things have changed now. You know, there's a lot of water under the bridge, shall I say. And the respect now, and even, you know, when I left fishing my last ship was a Sears Forester. I was mackerelling in 1980. That was the last trip I did on a hull trawler. I became a fish buyer at Scarborough and Whitby. So I had that connection with the fishermen there as well. You know, the respect. Because it's like the Premier League, you know, the big boys of the Premier League. This is what Hull was, Hull and Grimsby and Fleetwood. And then you get your inshore boats, but they knew that the weather up there, you know, and what we went through, it shows you that by the amount of people. And
do you, so I'm thinking about the community on Hessel Road and going out on
oh
Road.
yeah.
Do you see similar things in Grimsby, or
Yeah.
is Hessel Road kind of quite different? Or?
Well, as you know, Hessel Road, I'll be honest with you, there's been incidences on Hessel Road, like Havelock Street. I knew somebody who'd left the front door open all night, and nobody'd go in your house. Do you understand what I'm saying? The respect, you know, one of the kids left the front door open all night, but nobody'd go in and do out. In Hessel Road, it shows you that there was no government help when you lost somebody at sea. When you was lost at sea, your wages stopped that day. There was very little compensation. You got your holiday pay money. I've seen that because we have the holiday pay cards. But everybody helps everybody else. And I do know through doing interviews myself with various people that the stories I've got of, I'll tell you one, a classic example. A 72-year-old man came in our centre one day, and he said he'd seen his dad's name on the board. So I said, right, I knew his dad had died. So I said, give us his name. So I got him sat down, give us his name, and we got talking. So I said, what happened to your dad? He says, he was washed overboard when he was 2 months old. So naturally I said to him straight away, well, you won't have a memory of your dad. He was 2 months old. He said, memory, I've never seen a photograph, ever, in 72 years. I said, would you like to have a look at this TV screen? I had a photograph of his dad from the newspaper, what happened 72 years ago. And to see a grown man cry, and all his thoughts was to go show his kids and grandkids how proud, because he's been worshipping in his head this great man who sacrificed his life to put a fish and chip dinner for the nation on the plate. And now he had a photograph and the obituaries. I give him them and all. And I do know there's a few incidences in Hull where the trouble with fishermen, we had some big families. I think, you talk about the Newloves and the Bartletts, you're talking 15 kids, you know what I mean? And I do know of a couple of incidences where the young children was passed to Winlows and nothing done officially, but brought up as their own, as though there was the mum and dad. Do you understand? Yeah. And I know 2 or 3 like that where that happened, where the community pulled together with everybody.
Like an extended family.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. I don't think that you could have seen in any other community the love what everybody had. Running a centre like this, we had 10 people in, let's say, one day, and within an hour, they was all related to each other. That's how crazy this...
Do you think that's why when you were going out to the clubs and pubs, it felt like being around, you felt comfortable?
Yeah. A while ago, I got given a video, and it's Scarborough Street, Strickland Street, Wasson Street and Walcott Street, the 3 streets here, commonly known as Faith, Hope and Charity. That was their name, streets. And this is a reunion of the families 30 odd year ago. I think the video is 1989, and it was at the 147 Club on Spring Bank, a place I've never been in, and it's a 1 hour 40 video of all their people, and it's amazing. I've played it on our sites, and people have come back, my granddad's on it, my nana and all like that, but to watch it, you would never get this today. You would never get it. Everybody's dancing with everybody. everybody saying hello to everybody. It's an absolute video, and if you need a copy, I'll give you a copy. It's something else. But I laugh at it. Going back to my green soap, there's about 6 women in this get-together, and they've all got the same green dress on. They must have been to Boise's on Esley Road and all bought a dress at the same time. Oh, yeah. As I say,
Can I ask you a bit about when you talked about fishermen's suits?
Yeah.
How did that differentiate from just a bog standard suit?
Yeah, well, we're in talks with a lady at the moment where she's getting all the funding. She's going to have half a dozen of us all get a made-to-measure fisherman's suit, and they're different to ordinary suits. They had half-moon pockets, pleats in the back, big belts. We've had various discussions how it came about, and somebody thinks from the cowboy days and all like that, and I don't actually know, but it was a flamboyant symbol, shall we say, of wealth in a certain way, because you never always had money, but it was your way of broadcasting. Now, I don't know the fishermen of Lowestoft and Fleetwood, that, going back to my green suit, they used to have bright yellow ones, and the Teddy Boys, it was similar to that. I've learnt so much from Claire, who's doing all this, and all the pronunciations of all the buttons and the gauntlet arms and all like that. It's fascinating. But, the women used to pawn these. As soon as you went to see, they used to put it in pawn and they used to get cash. Then the day before you came home, they'd go and get it back out so you could wear it. Some fishermen had left quite a few suits, but it's very hard to find one nowadays. We had one made a while ago.
What sort of material was it, do you know?
No, well, it'll just be cotton and whatever. It'll be... In today's, I think if you made them today, it'd be, manufactured stuff, nylon and all like that.
And the colours had to be bright, were they? Or?
Yeah, that was another thing. You never... Although Waller, who comes in here, he's got a fisherman's jacket, part of the suit, and it's black. You never saw him like that. There was always light grey, light blue. Very smart. Always suede shoes, 9 times out of 10. White shirts, obviously. I've always been a shirt guy.
And always white shirts, or were they sometimes patterned or white shirts?
Yeah. But then, as I say, leaving school in 1971, it was the what's it called? Wasn't it? The era of, David Bowie, Sweet, Mud, and all the big collars, round collars, and that changed it slightly. From the old style of the 60s. Unfortunately, I was still at school in the 60s, but I missed all that, and luckily we've got 500,000 photographs on our file, and I've got all the fishermen with the suits on, and the wide bottoms. I know bell bottoms was out round about 1973, and everybody wore them. And obviously, the young generation of the 70s, they sort of shied away from the suits a lot. It sort of died out after me leaving school, to be quite honest, because obviously the older gentlemen who passed on, they weren't there to be seen in them. But there was some. It was all, and especially in summer, you wear just a shirt or a jumper or whatever. But it was that.
And you mentioned in town did you go anywhere else when you were shopping for your suits?
Yeah. Well, as I say, Waistles was a place, and personally, when we were leaving school, one of the more modern shops was Clothing House, which is about 500 yards.
On Hessel Road?
Yeah, it's here, 500 yards up the road, and that's where I got a lot of my stuff from, because it was that, that era of the pop music, that round collars, checkered shirts, and I remember getting a light blue jacket and trousers, like it was a suit matching, and it was like a real nice blue, but all the edges all the way and down the legs had white stitching. And it was a one-off. It was I never saw another one like it, and I love that. that was great.
What about the hairstyles? What sort of...
Oh, I
Did you
don't
have to
even
keep
go
it neat
there.
for
Yeah.
fishing, or could you do what you wanted?
No, we all had long hair. You know, I've got photographs of myself, and sometimes I'm embarrassed because I had long hair. You know, you was away for 15 weeks. You didn't have a barber out there. When you used to go away for 15 weeks, unfortunately, a lot of fishermen want the hygiene was out the window sort of thing. They never used to get shaved for 15 weeks or cut their hair, let alone get a shower. And as you was coming down the Humber, coming home, you'd walk down the alleyway and somebody'd come out the shower who's had a shave, and I think, who the hell's that? It was like that. You'd turn around and say, you'd hear the voice, know the voice, and you think, good God. You know, because they've had a beard like Shackleton and...
And that's something you'd have to get a shave before you went out, would it? Just
Oh,
smart,
yeah. A lot of fishermen, unfortunately, weren't very good with health, hygiene at sea. Although we had, modern ships I was in, we had showers and everything and whatever. Some ships, before my time, used to run out of fresh water. There was no drinking water for days coming home. They used to run out of food, so you ate fish for dinner, breakfast and tea. So, in them days, you couldn't go use toothpaste or out like that. And a lot of the guys, as I say, was like a crew of tramps. It was very smelly, because don't forget you had 2-man berths, but in the olden days you had 8-man berths. Imagine 8 men sleeping in the same room on a fishing trawler. You wouldn't believe it. You won't believe it.
So I was just wondering, so you mentioned Scamps was the place that you really liked. Whereabouts was Scamps?
Scamps was, it caught fire, would you believe? It's a car park now, and it has been since then. There was Scamps, that was down George Street. There was Ballye.
To George Street in town?
Yeah. There was Ballye, which used to be Malcolm's before it was Ballye. There was...
Again, is that in town?
Yeah, that's just along from there. It's a comedy club now, in Hull, if you know where that is. There was the various pubs. There were some pubs, like, you wouldn't go in. I didn't go in Talbot a lot, but all the fishermen did.
Is that in town?
That's in town.
And why did you avoid Talbot?
It was near the monument in town. It's just a small pub. It wasn't a big pub. Next door was Sandringham. I used to go in Tony's a lot. Freddie Foster, an ex-bosun on a trawler, he had Tony's. Now, as a kid, when my sister married Kenny Bartlett, a fisherman, big family from Gillett Street, they used to have parties at my mum's, and I remember I used to have a little tan side. I used to take all the bottles back to Tony's the next day. I was on a real good thing. And then it became one of my best pubs. I loved it, Freddie Foster. I remember being in there one day, worse for wear, having too much to drink, and he said, come on, you might as well stay here. And don't forget, in them days, when I left school, the pubs opened from 11 till 3, then 7 while half 11 o'clock. And it wasn't until, the 80s that they extended the drinking hours. But on a Monday in Hull, I don't know if anybody's explained this to you, it used to be market day at the, all the livestock in the town. And Builders used to be open all Monday afternoon, so everybody used to rush to Builders or Transport Club, because Tony's in town, Yorkshireman, it became a Yorkshireman later, that it was opposite Transport bus station. And we used to sneak into there so we could drink in an afternoon. Some of the fishermen, it's a known fact, went on the paddle ferry from pier because their bar was open all day. So they'd met their way down to pier after 3 o'clock. There were a couple of trips to Barton and back, never leave the bar, and then go straight back out on the night. And, as you get older, your drinking don't want as good as when you was a young lad. Because I'll be honest with you, some fishermen, they could be drunk for 2 weeks or 3 days. And it was a relief sometimes to get aboard a ship and, sort of...
How do you think that impacted them, that level of drinking?
Well, as I say, you know, if I'll give you an example, we've got the poem here. Have you read it, the poem, what we've got?
I think, yeah.
Yeah. If a fisherman got home at 8 o'clock on a Sunday night, he'd go in, his kids would be his wife and kids. The kids would be straight in his kit bag to look for sweets, what you bought out of bond. Then he's got one thing on his mind. This is 8 o'clock on a Sunday night. He's going to the pub while 11. So he'd see his kids for half an hour, get his wife and go to the pub. When he got home, they're in bed asleep. He'd get up the Monday morning, which is his settling day, get up with the kids, they'd probably go to school, and he'd go down to settle, then he'd be out all day. By the time he gets home, the kids are back in bed. He'll get up on the Tuesday morning, see the kids to school, and they'll go to school, and he'll go shopping, and you know where he's going to go, pub. 2 o'clock on the Wednesday morning, he's back at sea. He's away again. So he's seen his kids for 2.5 hours in 3 days. That happened 10 times a year. So he'd seen his kids for less than 30 odd hours because of his lifestyle. And, you know, I know it was great when pubs started letting kids in and all like that. But, you know, I've heard all the stories where the kids used to sit outside of a pub while the dad's inside, and he was sending bottles of lemonade out and crisps and goodies, and that's how society. You never saw your kids grow up. Do you know what I mean? Our David, he's got about 18 grandkids, you know, and he's got 4 children now, David, and he tells you, you know, he spent a lot of time at sea, and he said he never saw them grow up. You know, you blink your eyes and all of a sudden it's a year gone, you know, because you're out, you've got to pay the rent, the electric, the gas. It wasn't very well paid at that. And that was the lifestyle where pub was a big thing. I loved Halfway, Rainers, St Andrew's Club. You know, there's a lot of pubs. Obviously, what are open now, Lion, that's flats.
Yeah.
You know, and
could you talk me through a night out on Hessel Road? What would it be like?
A night out. Well, when we were living in town, I'd get a taxi up here to Halfway, meet Carl and the lads, and then it's either Gypsyville Tavern, and then, especially when you knew other friends and they'd just landed, you know which pub they'd be in. Tim Brown's, Snooker, Rainers. Rainers, I've heard rumours, it was one of the first pubs in England to take £1,000 in a day because of the crews what used it. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there was always conflicts in the community, and I will say something, I've seen it many times and I've been involved in it myself. If you had a problem with somebody, you'd go outside the pub and sort it out, and then go back in and buy each other a drink.
I sort it out while we
fighting.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lot of tension, shall we say, between the wives, you know, at home and what have you. And there was trouble. But there was some right characters in the pubs. You must have heard of Dillinger. Dillinger, right. Arthur Denton, he was lost at sea in the end. He used to go into Rainers, and in them days, the women used to leave the babies outside in prams, and he used to swap them about. It's a well-known, documented fact. He'd go swap the kids in the prams, and the tatters, you know, the horse and cart people who did all the scrap metal and everything. He's reportedly took one of the horses into the pub. He unshackled it and took the horse into the pub. He's also turned them round. You know, when it's horses in its rullies, he took one out and faced it the other way. And he was a character, he's a well-known character in the pub. I'm in discussions, hopefully one day we'll have a plaque in there for him, because he was such a Dillinger, everybody knew Walter Denton, Dillinger they called him, of Rainers. Then you had like a guy called Pigeon Smith, always in there. And I don't know exactly, but they say, they had a skipper's room at the back. D Street Club was on Hessel Road, and all the skippers and mates used to, it was the higher rank people what used to use that. But Halfway, I've always loved Halfway. It's been a special pub to me.
Obviously, that's still there.
Yeah.
What did it look like before? Was it similar or?
Yeah, it had, a snugger room and a bar. It's all one thing in all one now. Where Rainers, they've still got separate rooms where the people used to be. But with Halfway, they knocked it into one. We've got a big fisherman's mural on the wall there. I don't know if you've seen it. I didn't use Millers a lot or Hawthorne. I've been in them, obviously, and it was a fleeting visit, we'll go there for one and all like that. I remember being in Kingfisher, was a relatively new pub, and there was a big family there. There was a few families, the Hines and Petties and all like that, great people. I'm related to some of them. And I remember there was 3 or 4 of us decalaners with these girls. So we'd had enough of these girls, so we got 2 taxis to go to town. And I remember getting in the front taxi, and I said to the taxi driver, I'm paying for both taxis, but lose them behind us. So it was like wacky races round town, trying to dodge them, all these 4 girls in the back. There was 4 of us, and 4 of them said, we've had enough, we're going to go do our own thing. And then we started to go further afield, like Witherspoon for the day. And fishermen, and it might sound crazy, but the richer you was, the further north you went. Usually, I think with my mum and dad, it was East Park every year. Then if you went to Witherspoon, then if you went to Hornsey, God forbid if you went to Brid, you was real. And that's how it was, because they all had caravans and all like that. And obviously it was good because the caravan parks had clubs and it was open all day. So.
And was it the similar people? Did you know people?
Yeah.
So it was kind
Listen,
of
I've been all over. I walked. You walk down Benidorm in summer, and there's half of Vesel Road there. There is, and you don't have to go far to know people from Vesel Road. It's a proud place to have been. When you look back and you think, wow, especially the community. And we've lost so many. It's one day there's going to be none of us left, and that's why we're here doing what we're doing now.
You mentioned that your mum moved back to Hessel Road. Was that for the community or?
No. My mum, she says she as a bairn was born down Gillett Street, where Marzi's fish factory is now, Arian Terrace, and that was bombed. That's where some of the family was killed. Then she moved to Walker Street because of that bombing. Then she met Thomas Wilson, the St Luke Street, which is more further on Annalby Road. Then when she got married to her first husband, she lived down just along from here. I forget the name of the terrace. And then that's where the house caught fire. Campbell Terrace, number 2. Campbell Terrace. A sister lived at number 1, a younger sister, both married fishermen. And then she met my father and had me there, but she had to move because of the fire. And we moved to Russell Place. My school was actually 10 yards away from my front door. Okay. I was always late.
What school were you at?
Brundle Street, they called it.
Okay.
Then I went to William Wilberforce, Sarah Henry Cooper, or Clifton Street Infants. But Sir Henry Cooper, there used to be the same name school on Hessel Road.
Oh, I wondered.
Yeah. Well, Sir Henry Cooper I went to was a modern one it was next to Leo Schultz School on Orchard Park. We used to get a bus every day there. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. When I went away on that pleasure trip, I brought a load of, the fish finder graph, showed you where all the shoals was, and I took it to school in geography. I was real proud of myself being doing the trip. Even the teachers thought I was an expert on fish. I remember when I got aboard the Kingston Almondine, we'd got to the fishing grounds off Iceland, and I said to my Uncle Jack, can I go gutting? So they got me this gear, so I goes out onto the deck, and there's this big thing. It was about 8 foot long, big grey thing. So I said, they said, right lad, you got a knife? To give me a knife, and they showed me how to put the knife in and open it up. The liver was just about as big as me, and I had to crawl it all out with all my hands and all the guts and the blood everywhere. So, and then they put a nose pipe on it and cleaned it. So I said, what do you do with that now? We said, we throw it off the side, we don't keep them. It was what we call a jelly cat. A jelly cat. And, the times, as a young kid, it was an adventure, and you was getting paid for it. I've seen some good things, I've seen some bad things, but on the majority of it all, it was all focused on going at home and going in the pub for 3 days.
I just wondered about when you were in the pub. Obviously, it was a lot about the social element, but also was there music and entertainment?
Oh yeah. Every night, as I say, I've got photographs, and behind people is a chalkboard, and it's got every day on and all the groups what are on, and sometimes you could go out 3 nights and see the same people, because the pub scene in them days was all local, obviously, like Rolf and the Rodens, and there was some great people singing. I did live in Lawton House down Bean Street once, and it was about 20 yards away from Phoenix Club. That was a big place, and a lot of famous people, Pat Phoenix and all like that, they've all been there. I've been talking to some of the people you've been interviewing, and they've told me, of artists, big artists, playing in a fisherman's pub. I know Lambeth on Branzone, that used to have a lot of big artists in them days, But as I say, this was the area, and I don't think you could stand at one end and have a pint in every pub. You won't make it to the end.
You mentioned Ruth and the Rudens.
Yeah.
Did you used to enjoy going to see
her? I used to go in Albion pub, but she used to have that, and in her later life. But she was very good. She was very good, and it's a wonder she didn't do any better. You know what I mean? She was just. I think she must have been just happy with being local, and what have you. But there was a lot of artists, and Wally, what did they call him? Wally Palmer. I think he had a lot of clubs, and he bought a few other clubs. But nowadays, when you go in a pub, anybody can get up and sing, can't they? You get all this karaoke. I go in town a lot now, but I still see all the same fishermen. I was out that weekend at a big memorial service, and when I went in pub, saw 4 or 5 of the old guys. A lot of them did like town, because obviously in them days it was easier to get a taxi or a bus. There was Sandringham, King Eddie upstairs, and then there was coffee clubs in all, what you might not have been told about. The coffee clubs, there was Penny Farthing, Gothenburg, Vicky.
Were they any along Hessel Road?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not as much as there was in the town. There was called coffee clubs, and there was open after hours. They'd open about 11 o'clock, and you'd go in and drink coffee all night. But there was always somebody to buy half a bottle of Bacardi or whiskey or whatever, and it was all done under the table, and that was the beginning of extended nightlife, and you could fall out of there in day, it'd be daylight next morning, and then the hours changed, didn't they? Of drinking, which made it easier for a lot of people. But them coffee clubs was notorious, shall we say. There was.
Were there any artists other than Ruth and the Rudens that you would make a beeline to go and see?
Not really, no.
Was it part? Because I know for some people it's quite an important part of their night out.
Yeah.
Was it less so for you?
Yeah, less so. Obviously, discos was our thing.
Okay, talk me through a disco.
In the glam years of the 70s, that's why everybody went in. If you went in Bailey's in town above the Co-op, my dad used to work there, by the way. I've seen the Drifters there and all like that. Jimmy Ruffin, he's played there. That was upper class. But Scamps was the disco, and it was the latest music in the right setting. And Ballyi, which used to be Malcolm's. And I've been in Bailey's a few times. I was in there the night I sailed in the Fleming with family. They had a little disco to it. And then you had Lexington Avenue, which I knew was Meccano. This is it, you see. When I was, even before I left school, I used to go in a pub. You know, so long as you behaved and you was a man long before you left school, do you understand? If you went in a pub and you behaved, you'd get served, you know. But in today's society, they want to see your passport.
Were there any discos along Hessel Road?
Yeah, well, all the pubs used to do. I do remember, and there's not a lot of people, I've said this to a lot of people, do you remember the disco in Criterion upstairs? Oh no, well I remember it.
Describe it to me, what was it like?
Well, Criterion is a small pub over there, right, and it's still open today, but upstairs is all flats now, and they turned the upstairs into a disco. And it was ideal because, you know, it was on your pub crawl, and the music, it was only 2 little rooms upstairs knocked into one with a bar, and it was dark. One of the most notorious pubs in all was Paragon in town. They call it Old Cheese now, and it had cubicles upstairs, but the ladies of the night used to use all that. But there was like petitions where you could all sit with whoever you wanted to, and that wasn't a very nice place, but it's all right now.
But Criterion, you enjoyed that?
Criterion was brilliant. Rayner's back room, I do remember one night, they call it, I don't know why they call it this, they call it the skate pound, I don't know why, but there's a room, and I was outside one night. You know, in these days, you was talking of a group of people outside of every pub. There wasn't no smoke, you know, you could smoke inside. I knew Clarice had been sat in there near her in the disco, the landlady. I'd gone outside, something had happened, and the taxi office next door, somebody ran at me and pushed me, and I went backwards, and I went through the window. My elbows went first. I went through this window. Luckily, I didn't get a cut anyway. I stood up and I thought, what do I do now? So I ran back in the pub. Well, she'd seen it at Clarice. She said, sit here and don't move. Because, you know, I wasn't even 18. So Joey Longthorne in them days was well known on Hessel Road, you know, the entertainer, and he used to get up in Rainers when the disco was on and sing, and karaoke wasn't a big thing in them days, although a few fishermen, I know Kenny Bartlett, who married my sister, he thought he was Elvis, and he could sing like him, and he'd get up in St Andrew's Club and sing, but they want the free open mic sort of thing what you get now. I do know, I've been to a few parties upstairs in D Street Club, and it was a hell of a room. It was huge, but there was just events. There wasn't no music, but when you look back on these photographs, you can see some of the names of the groups, and you know they're long gone. You know, they weren't the best singers in the world, I don't think, but you know, what's ever come from our city, beautiful south, and that's it, innit? Full stop, done.
Thinking about Clarice, you mentioned Clarice.
Yeah.
Was she quite a matriarch? Did you feel?
Yeah, and so was Val from Tony's, and the lady with a big bun, I forgot her name now. There was well-respected barmaids.
Because it must have been quite a male-heavy clientele often.
Yeah, well, there was Terry Skelton. He was a bit feminine, was Terry, but if 10 of you went in as a family, and you've only got to tell him once the round, he'd remember it. You know, he was very good.
Yeah. Do you think it was...
Flo Hemingway, that's it. Flo Hemingway. She worked in Tony's for a while. She worked in a few pubs in the time, But she was a darling of a woman, you know. She was real polite, real respected. Yeah, she was spot on, yeah.
Was it important that the barmaid or the barman was part of the community?
Oh, yeah, of course. You know, even today when you go in a pub and if you know somebody, you get served a lot quicker, don't you? And that was part of the ambience, shall I say, you know, because you go in some pubs and you can be, you know, you get fed up of waiting. But when you knew the bar staff, it was a lot better because obviously being trusted in a pub, because there was always trouble now and again and people being drunk, but if you knew, it was like knowing the manager of a football team. Proud to know him, you know. I support Man United and I know Alex Ferguson, hello Alex, and all like that.
So there's a bit of like superstar, like fame about the
Yeah. My mate Scotty, he was the last guy to have D Street Club. Smashing guy, you know what I mean? And even now when I go in town, you know, I've got to know all the people behind the bar, and it's, at least you feel a part of it all, that little community. Now imagine Ezel Road in the 70s, you know, and that's how it used to be. And don't forget, through the good times and the bad times, there'll have been fishermen where they've let them have beer and well, pay me next trip and all like that. That will have happened, without a doubt. There was a back door place you could go to down Westdock Ave, Boiled Oils. You'd go in there and take a couple of cases and you'd pay for it the next trip you come home. But lo and behold, if you never got it again. You know, you'd be blacklisted and what have you. But there was a lot of that going on. The opposite Rainers, on the opposite corner, there used to be money lenders stood there, and you borrow money, but you had to pay them back the next trip. And then don't forget, if you settled in debt, you had to borrow money from the company so you could survive while you was home till you went. Because the whole time you was at home, you weren't on pay, you know. Only when you went and board the ship again. No, you could be home for, God knows, if the ship broke down, you won't be on pay. You had to go sound the door.
I can imagine there would have been a lot of tensions because of that.
Yeah.
How did they manage that within the pubs? I'm thinking...
well, we never used to have bouncers.
Yeah.
We never used to have bouncers. And you'd always get somebody who's in the pub, you know, who's a bit of an handy lad, and he'll sort of try and sort it out. And this is what the community did. We sorted it out between ourselves.
It wasn't up to the bar?
No, because there was a lot of barmaids. The barmaids wouldn't go out. But, you know, I know Flo Hemingway and Clarice, they were stern people as well as you had to be. You know, they couldn't show their weakness. And, they, you know, obviously if they say you're bad, you're bad. But there was no bouncers, no. You know, and I've seen some right fights outside of Rainers and what have you. And, you know, tables going over and it caused a problem, you know, because especially the young lads, you know, just left school, go in a pub, drink 10 pints, and I've done it myself, fell asleep in the pub. And, you know, if somebody knocks a table over in them days, it was a bit of a problem. Either you got the beer back in, or there'd be trouble. Yeah.
Could there be an element of it being slightly scary, a little bit nerve-wracking, or did you always feel safe?
Yeah, well, it was like sailing on a trawler. Sometimes you got a guy who was a bad one, you know, and a bully boy, shall we say. And, you know, I've sailed with them, and you'll always get another fisherman saying, hey, now pack it in, leave him alone, you know, and that happened everywhere. There was bullying going on all the time, and it was all to do with rank, you know, the higher up. But, you know, I've sailed with the best skippers out of all, Billy Brettles, Dickie Taylors, and the absolute gentlemen, you know, because they was that good at the job. And you had to be good to sail with them. And as long as you did your job, everybody got along fine. Yeah. There was, I remember a guy who was mate with us and skipper, Jack Atkey. I remember being in the sea as Forester and having a discussion the day before we docked. And I said, the next day was my birthday, the day with June the 12th, we're docking. So I said, I'm going to halfway for a drink before I go home to my mum's. So he went, well, I only live down Eastbourne Street, I'll come with you. And then Dickie Taylor, the skipper, you know, we got a taxi off together, the three of us, into the pub. I'm stood with one of the top skippers, you know, on my birthday. I was galley boy, you know, at the time I'd just left school, as I say, Sears Forester. And, you know, and then I sailed with Jack in the Seafridge Petrel. And we used to go in St John's every Friday for the dance. He used to create an engine room job, so we had to go in and tie up. And there used to be two pubs there called the Stardust and the Four Go Go Go, they called it. Strip club it was. And we've had some right parties in, you know, he used to say to me, don't call me skipper when we're in the club. But I remember him coming home in the Sears Forester, we'd been in pub all day. And something had happened. I think one of his friends had picked him up in his car, and his wife, Christine, was sat in the back, and she fell asleep going home. And it was one of them hot summer days, and he left her in the car. Oh, there was hell on. But Jack Atke, he's one of the lads. He was a skipper. You wouldn't think he was a skipper, but he was one of the lads, and he likes his drink. He used to get us all in the berth and say, get a writing pad out and pen. Right, who's buying the first case in a bottle? You know, I am. And you'd have to pay for it out of your expenses. And he used to go for, honest, we had some right parties. And down in the houses.
Yeah.
You know, that was another big thing about the fishing industry. When pubs used to close at 3 o'clock, people used to go back to their houses, parties. There was always parties going on.
And what's it in a party way? Was it like sing-alongs? Were they dancing?
Not really. No, there was music, you know, and we in them days liked Sandy Posey, Tammy Wynette, you know, and then I came along, you know, in the 71, it was glam rock, wasn't it? You know, Sweet, Blockbuster, you know, Mud, people like that. But it depended, you know, I've been to parties and the guy had put Timmy Euro singing, and I never did, you know, you think, turn that. You know, free beer, so who cares? You know, and you'd get them dancing, you'd get them dancing in the terrace.
Men and women? Or mainly,
yeah, and that's what it was. It was parties until then pubs started being open all day. And then we found little niche pubs where you could go, stay beer. You know, you used to have lock-ins. There was always somebody in court, you know, for having a lock-in, you know, a landlord in Hull in them days. Because that's what you do. And, you know, it's hard, innit, to keep a dozen people quiet in a pub after hours. The police... we've had one of the ex-policemen come in here. He was at Gordon Street Police Station, and he was telling me, he said he was in Flinton Street, just a couple of doors, you know, not very far from here, and there was a bit of a disturbance going on in the terrace, so he went down to see what was going on. Anyhow, these fishermen knew he could play piano, so they got him on the piano in the house, right? So he's playing these songs and everybody's enjoying the scene. And then when he got back to the police station, the sergeant said, you know, we was looking for you. These are in the days where communications weren't like there was today. He said, we had trouble on the boulevard, there was something going on, a fight. Where was you? He went, oh, I was in Gypsyville. He went, no, you weren't. We could hear you playing the piano down Flinton Street. And that's how it was. The policeman was in the house on duty playing a piano, because people had pianos in them days. These big affluent houses here, they was the same. You know, there was, and that's how it was. That was your entertainment. We used to take record players away and tie it to the ceiling so the ship's moving, so that the right, I'd be doing that. I was in the Seafridge Petrel, and Johnny Cannon called me on the bridge. He said, Jerry, bring your record player up. And there was a song. We was off Bear Island, Russia, you know, that way. And there was a song from LA to New York, and he loved it. So I'm stood on the bridge holding this, trying to keep it straight while it's playing. And he played it to all the fleet it was night time. You could see all the ships round us, and he's playing all this music, and that's how it was. We thought we was posh in the Seafridge Petrol. We had an 8-track cassette. Do you know, in them days, it was a 3-hour tape, continuous. And we used to have that playing in the factory, you know, the fish factory on the ship, because it was a filleting ship. And we had, like, music, the same music, every 3 hours. And it got you through your shift.
Well, music was important to you then?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I liked I remember the full crew of the Seafridge Petrol I was in. We all had the very best of Sandy Posey. I've still got it. But yeah, Sweet and all like that. It was, you know, I've got all the 70s at home. And it's funny, and you'll play me a 70s song from 1971 to 1979. You play me a song and I'll tell you what ship I was in.
That, like, familiar to you?
Yeah. You know, I'm in the car sometimes and I'll say to her, well, I was in the Seafridge Petrol and this was, I was in the Armandinis, I was in the Forester, Somerset, and it brings that back to you, the exact time, you know. There was a thing this morning on the radio when I was 17, and this woman went on and she said, oh, I was 17, what year? 1979. So I had a bet. I said it'll be Another Brick in the Wall, Video Killed the Radio Star, or Chiquitita. All them songs came out in 1979. It's crazy, isn't it? How you remember these things. I don't remember Chiquitita, because that was a song when my mum died in 1979. But the Other Brick in the Wall and Buggles, Video Killed the Radio Star, was number 1, number 2 for Christmas 1979. So, yeah, it's good when I hear music. And I think, I was in the Ross Trafalgar then, or the Ross Leonis.
And would you hear the same music then going out as well?
Oh yeah, I love 70s.
Yeah.
It's on in the car all the time.
You mentioned that there'd be parties in the terraces,
so
you'd be outside as well.
Yeah.
Would that spill out onto the street elsewhere? Were there other, like, community social?
Oh yeah,
where
yeah.
you would be all together outside and.
At my mum's, when we lived in town, there was a lady next door called Doris. And they weren't a fishing family, but when we had a party, we had a big grass in front of us. New Year, it was unbelievable. And I remember being about 10-year-old, and we had a party. Kenny Bartlett, my sister, my mum, everybody was there. Our Davey was a fisherman, Mick Landrick, he was a fisherman. Mulligan's was there. There was a big crowd in my mum's and next door. And unfortunately, I still remember to this day, I was about 9. They found me in next door's pantry with a bottle of Dimple whiskey. And I can still remember to this day being sick for hours and hours and hours. I'd drunk a load of whiskey, and I don't drink whiskey now, I can't. Since that day I hated it. But everything, you know, you'd go in each other's houses, and the party would grow, sort of thing, especially down. Imagine being down a little terrace thingy with music. You can't help but join in, you know, and that's all the community was. Even the show workers, you know, some of them had to be up for work because some of them was unloading the ships. But parties. But I will say, as soon as the pub opened, that was it. Everybody was in pub. So and then parties. When I lived in Rugby Street, we had parties till the early hours. We had complaints, but half the time they'd come in and have a drink, and then, you know, you out of respect, you'd sort of calm it down.
Were there any specific days that were important within the community? And obviously, like there's the.
For myself, New Year's unbelievable.
Right.
I've always got tears at New Year, always, for my mum and the rest of them. I've got that many. I've got more memories of that, and in our day on Ezel Road at midnight, all the ships in the docks blow their horns at midnight. You don't hear it now. There used to be hundreds of ships in the docks, and it was a tradition in all docks. All the ships blow their horns at the stroke of midnight, and you know, for a lot of fishermen, it was a. I think for myself, after being in the Fleming shipwrecked, I know Christmas Day has always been a pain for me. I hated it for years. But New Year, it's always a bigger family thing for me, New Year. Because of the parties, we used to have some big parties, New Year. Me and Barry Pierce, me mate.
At home or out and about?
Outside.
That's
Yeah, everybody used to, I've got photographs of us all on the grass celebrating New Year. And as I say, across the road was East Riding Pub. And about 10 years ago, I was in there on New Year with friends. And, my mum's house is across the road. We no longer have it. And, on the stroke of New Year, I walked across and I said, they was all out on the grasses. So I said, excuse me, do you live here, love? She said, yeah. I said, can I let you New Year in? She said, why? I said, I used to live here. I said, I've got memories of my mum and everything, my dad. Can I let you New Year in? She let me go in. Yeah. And I went back in, I went in the kitchen where my mum would be, We've got a lot of memories of that. She, although she lost her dad, as I say, when she was 13, in them days, we lived in the kitchen a lot. My dad was a porter at Co-op in town. He'd been at sea. And our paper boy used to knock on the back door and give her the paper. That was our Sky News. That was our Radio Umbersad. In them days, they want the information. And don't forget, she lost her dad at the age of 13. And when she saw the first ship, St. Romanus, in 1968, I was sat in the kitchen with her. Old trawler missing. Our David and Raymond was in that area on different ships. Then the second one, the Kingston Peridot. And I saw my mum cry, holding the paper, through the pain, what she went through. Then when the third trawler went, unbelievable. And then shortly after that, my mum got the paper, and on the back page you had a column where they put the latest. She'd read the paper, and then tea's on for me dad, you know what I mean? It's about 5:30, he leaves that. So all of a sudden, she's reading the paper, she'd got to the back. All of a sudden, she started screaming. The paper went up in the air. What she'd read was, the lifebelt from the Hull trawler Caesar was discovered at sea. My brother Dave was in the Caesar. So as a mother, she's thinking, Jesus. So I runs out, go get your dad. My little sister was with me. So I jumped on this little bike with two punchers. I'm going down Kilburn Avenue to go to Co-op to get my dad. And then Sandra called me back. My mum read up till then, the paper went in the air. When my sister picked it up, it says, the Caesar has radioed in, everything's fine. So, that was my mum all over, and it really affected her. I will say this, when I was shipwrecked, this is from my book, this, obviously Boxing Day morning, we ran aground at 7:10 Christmas night in northern Norway. My dad gets up Boxing Day morning. In them days, the pubs was open on Christmas Day. It was only crossroad, 10 yards, 20 yards. My dad got up, went in that kitchen, smallest room in the house. Although it was a modern house, it didn't have radiators. So my dad had put the gases on, right? Put the kettle on, clicked the radio on. It was BBC. That's all we had in them days, 1973. There wasn't no Radio Umbersad or local radio or Viking radio or anything. We didn't have a telephone. That's how poor we was. We didn't have a telephone in the house. So my dad flicks the radio on, and we sat there probably with an hangover, having a drink, and then the news came on. Reports that the Hull trawlery in Fleming has ran aground in the night, nothing heard of from her. So my dad told me this. He said, I was sat there thinking, Ian Fleming. Don't forget me two other brothers was fishermen. So I thought, So he goes upstairs to my mum. My mum's in bed, asleep. So he said, Jane, what ship's our Jerry in? Straight away, my mum told me she was awake. Why? What's wrong? He said, you beg her up. She's been on the radio. She's missing. Something's happened in the night. My dad ran downstairs to go across to our David's house because he lived down Gordon Avenue, across road from us. To go, because David's wife's brother was the cook with us on the Ian Fleming. And my mum says she got up, went into that kitchen, and my mum says she spoke to her father that morning praying that I was all right. And half an hour later, they're all at the house and a car pulls up and the mission man got out. Now, nobody wanted the mission man anywhere near your house because there was always a carrier of bad news. You know, the mission men of old, God bless them, the great men, if they walked down your street, you'd pray, don't go down my terrace, don't knock on my door, because they came, you know, like the girl, they had to go to 36 families. The triple trawler tragedy, 58 families. And, you know, it was good, you know, the mission man came across and knocked on the door, said, look, your son's all right, he's in hospital, so that was all right. And, you know, them experiences, my mum liked to drink, my mother.
Where would she go drinking?
She'd go in his riding. Yeah, when I used to be a fisherman, my dad, all my settlings, I never had a bank book in them days, I used to give my dad it. My dad used to look after all my money, and I used to say to my dad, it's silly, innit, when you think £1,000. I used to say, give us a tenner, Dad, I'm going out. And my dad would give me a tenner, and my mum used to say, are you going to treat me to a bottle? And she used to go across and have a bottle of beer every night. You know, she liked to drink, did my mum? She loved partying. But you can understand, you know, losing her father at the age of 13.
Yeah. I don't know, I think you mentioned before about, was it pram races? Was that something?
Oh, the pram races.
Yeah,
It's funny you should say that.
Men and women all sort of.
Yeah, well, we can't have them now. What the pram races signify is that on a Friday, all the women used to go down the dock and get their husband's wages. Now then, in the early 70s, we used to get them delivered to our house, my mum's. I was on, the first trawler I went on was £6 a week. I was on £6 a week. And it used to be sent by registered envelope, but you paid for the envelope, not the company. So a lot of women used to go down in the late 60s and early 70s for their husband's wages, and they'd save money by doing that. And it used to be a race to get down there because they wanted the money and go shopping, because it was their bread and butter. And then when the industry fell apart, we started having pram races on Ezel Road, and you can't do it now because nobody will insure you. You know, because they used to close the road off, Ezel Road itself, up near D Street, and they used to have races where people used to get dressed up and, you know, mimic a baby and all like that. And
so describe to me the costumes.
Well, obviously Lou be Lou, you know, they all used to turn up in their pyjamas and, you know, what have you, and have red rosy cheeks and hair, you know, as though they were a baby, and nappies. Right. I've seen grown men running down Ezel Road in a makeshift nappy. When we used to sail and your mates saw you away, especially if they got with a lady and they started having kids, you used to say, do you want a pack of nappies? So you used to pay for a pack of nappies as you were sailing for your mate to take home for his newborn babes. And as I say, the council stopped it because they didn't want to stop, you know, the road, close the road. Granted, you could do it down another street, but I do believe now there is no, because there was their own prams. And you know what can happen with prams, and you're pushing them at speed and alcohol was involved. So you can imagine that the insurance companies stopped it. Mm-hmm. You could theoretically do it, but it would be a lot of money to get insured. I do think some of the insurance companies turned them down and said no, because if you break a leg or graze or, you know, get knocked out or whatever and trap your fingers in wheels, and it happened, and it stopped.
And so dressing up was a big part of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, oh yes. I remember being in Phoenix Club one one Halloween, and there was a guy there, and they stood a coffin up, and he was stood in it all night drinking. Yeah. Well, this is what they did on Hazel Road, you know. They used to dress up, and as you know, you've been talking to Margaret, and I've got loads of photographs of her all in the. They went that little bit further, and as you know now, you know, Halloween and all like that, and people get dressed up now. It's unbelievable, isn't it? The makeup and all like that. But they used to do that, you know, big style.
Can you tell me about some of the costumes that you remember? Any that stand out?
Well, I remember seeing this one, like Low Below, you know, and it's men dressing as women, you know, as babies, you know, with big boobs and.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I've never been into out like that, but dressing up as fishermen as well in a pram, you know, with a duck suit on. A duck suit was a waterproof thing.
Right.
In the film The Last Trip, what's going to be coming out soon, we sent for 4 duck suits, and they sent us 4 duck suit. You know, it's a bit of the part of the film. So there's 4 ducks in it, running around a monument in town. Yeah, that was meant that.
Yeah.
That was a part of the film.
Do you think the dressing up partly is like a bit of a release out of such quite stressful lives, and then you dress up and...
I have recently been showing people a lot of photographs of the nightlife, which I've got thousands of photographs, and you could always tell the rank of the fisherman by what the wife was. If he had a big fur coat on, you knew he was a mate skipper, you know, or chief engineer, the people on the right money, you know, and their hair done, you know, there was immaculate. Do you know what I mean? And there's a photograph there. There's a lady on it, and she's I forgot her name now. One of the stars of song and what have you. Is she Dusty Springfield? She looks like Dusty Springfield. Her hair done in. The hair was as important as the costume. Some of these women, but the majority of the time, the dressing up was on these special occasions like that. Not like it is today. You know, you get it for Halloween, don't you? And they have a 70s, you know, they might have a 70s night. We couldn't dress up for the 70s because it was the 70s. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
But the fishermen, as I said, they had their own identity with the suits and the wives. And it was a great time. It was a warm feeling. It is now running this place, and you know the support we get, and we bring back so many memories. That's why we've got a box of tissues again, and to show people photographs of the family they've never seen before, you know, and obviously a lot of trawlermen, people were born up to a year after, 8 months after it was done. And that's what happened. Even with that guy, he was born 2 months. He was 2 months old when his dad went.
We're talking of photos. I wonder if we went through the photos that you shared with me. Yeah. Also, so obviously the project is. We're talking about the artists that we see, and I know you mentioned that the drag shows were not something that you tended to go to. What were your memories of that kind of performance?
I remember. I'm a man's man. I'll be honest with you, if you want the truth, I cringe. I don't, for the life of me. Everybody to their own thing, but to me it just doesn't sit right with me, what makes... I've got our Blakey, you won't believe it, he's 10, and he's like Wayne Sleep. Do you know Wayne Sleep? Real feminine. He dresses up. He's a part of Napa in town. He's on front stage. I was there last week to watch him doing this Cats or whatever. And, you know, and I say to our Kaylee, my daughter, I say, hopefully he'll get interested in girls one day.
It's interesting that you say that, because I imagine you weren't the only person that felt like that.
I feel uncomfortable.
Right. But, yeah, and that's it. But, and there was that in this space, and there will have been other people that felt similar to you.
Yeah.
How do you think that the two worlds existed? Because performance.
Well, you've also got to look at the community in the industry like this. I was born in 1956. I left school in 71, and my education about women and the sexuality of it all was always hush hush. We are old school. I didn't know nothing about women till I was 15 practically, and that's how it was in them days. Today's society is a bit different. They get educated at school. In my day, you never spoke about it. It was all swept under the table. You know, the you know, I said to some lads, you see some of these young lasses, I say, do you know there was nothing like this when I was a kid? You know, when you go around town and like some of these women now around town, they can be 13, 14, they look as though they're 20, you know. And I said, Jesus Christ, you know, we was that old fashioned. It was taboo. It was. Your parents never told you about sex education or out like that. So this is when, I've always said this is my choice, by the way. You know, when you see this Graham Norton on telly and these presenters who talk a bit feminine, I think the BBC are famous for it. Putting them on and it's shoved down your throat. If you want to be a light bulb, no, I know I'm going to swear, you can edit this. If you want to be a lampshade and shove a lamp bulb up your ass, get on with it, so long as it doesn't affect me.
And did you feel the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. It didn't.
We didn't know nothing about girls as before I went to sea, and then I was in a man's world. And what some of the crews used to say about girls, I used to think, really? You know, as though it was crude. I didn't know that. You know, it was not like it is today. No, not like it is today.
And if you saw a drag queen, was it the kind of over-sexualised nature of the performance that made you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen this video for ages and ages, but there was a video on, it must have been 15, 20 years ago, and it's near Broadway pub in town. That was a fisherman's pub. They call it Propaganda now. And there's this guy having a go at this woman, right, near the crossing. You can see the pub in the background, and he grabs her hair, and obviously it's a wig. So she's going, no, leave me alone. Then he grabs this wig, then he goes, I'll knock your head off. He's finished. I haven't seen that video for years, and he was going, no, leave me alone, go away. And as soon as he pulled a wig off, he, I'll knock your head off. And it didn't, I'm trying to find out Blakey on here. Let's have a look at this, and you'll see what I'm on about. And that there was homosexuals among fishing crews sometimes, and they didn't last long. Do you know what I mean? There was shunned. It was a bad thing, and because in probably the worst job in the man's world, we didn't it didn't run well with a lot of people. I know this is what I've always said, women are at home if they're with a couple of homosexuals, right? They know that they're not a threat to them. Do you understand? This is how I see it. But where they wouldn't be with an ordinary guy. And I think women feel safe with somebody who's like that. There's a guy who works in our lassie's place, and he's open about it. He lives with another male, and they go on like house on fire. But, that's my perception of it. That
when you saw the drag queen performances, did audiences tend to be more women, or was it a mixture?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You must, if there's a stripper coming in all, it's like we used to go into up Bransholm Telstar Club, and what's a stripper every Sunday? The bingo was on and all, and 99.9% of that crowd was men. You get a male stripper, it's 99.9 women.
Yeah.
Now, you wouldn't see me stood at the bar. Not a chance. Not a bloody chance. My lad last week, our Danny, he went with his wife and a crowd to that bongo bingo in Hull. And he went dressed as Top Gun. His wife was in the army or whatever, American. And he put it on before they went, and I put, really, playing bingo at your age? Trying to belittle him because he's going, I know it's a great enjoyment because he's getting dressed up, but trying to belittle him because of he's playing bingo at his age. I don't play bingo. So it's sat and all, and I would imagine in all these clubs you had the link bingo, it'd always be the women playing. You wouldn't get a fisherman playing bingo because it'd look as though, what? Playing bingo, you tart. I do it to my lad.
But it was a space where there were people who were gay or lesbian.
There was certain pubs,
and
yes.
they obviously were able to spend time on Hessel Road.
Yeah.
Do you think the space was safe for them because it was like each to their own, or do you think there was an element of risk?
Well, I know Rainers now have drag queens in there now, and the place is full of women. But I still think that when it used to be the true fishermen of this port, when the industry was up and running, if you spoke to any old fisherman in the street, they'd say, what? Not a chance. They had their own little niche pubs, shall we say.
Which pubs would you say? Anyway?
Well, Tony's, I remember, this will be about 15, 20 years ago, my mate Alan, I lived up on Bransholm, he said, you doing out Saturday night, Ger? I went, why? Because I used to run him about. I used to say, at New Year sometimes, I used to say, are you going out? He said, why? I said, well, I'll pick you up early morning. I'm not having a drink. Or Christmas, or all like that. So I used to go. He used to do the same to me. If I wanted to go out and say, pick us up at 2 a.m. from town, he'd do it. And he rang me up one day. He said, we're all going to Tony's. Because we knew it was Tony's. They called it Yorkshireman after that. And it was a pub full of homosexuals. And I remember, I didn't know. He said, from there we're going somewhere else, so you're going to have to stay with us for an hour. So I said, all right. And I went in and there was all these people with dresses on and all like that. Well, it's when smoking was stopped in pubs. So he said, right, Jeff, left me at the bar. I ran out the place to him, to go stand with him while he had a cig. He said, we're going out for a fag. I went, you're not going to leave me in here by myself. He said, yeah, we're going for a fag. We can't have one in here. And there was in the pub they'd put, one of our white telephone boxes. I said, I'm going to get locked in there. He said, don't be daft. I said, buggy, So they walked out and I felt, I'm not kidding, I followed him out. I went and stood outside while he had a cig. I can't stand anybody who cigs. I don't like it. And I was frightened to stay in there by myself. Very uncomfortable. I've sailed with a radio operator who was an homosexual. It was known. He was caught when we was in St John's. He had a guy in his berth with him aboard the ship, and he didn't get a very good reception. He got sacked when he got home. But it was always frowned on, fishermen and that sort of activity. And you'd never see out like that. I will laugh. I'm laughing for a reason because I've just remembered something. I was sat in my berth on the ship, and this engineer, he was a real nice guy, and he'd been for a shower. So he'd come down the ladder, naked, but he had a towel here. And he stood at my door. I went, "What are you doing?" He went, "The lads keep looking at me tits." He had no else on, you know, and things like that, which is a joke. It's embarrassing. And I was honest, I must have been like a tomato. Yeah, out like that, a lot of fishermen don't. No. And I wouldn't ever go pay to watch out like that.
Mm-hmm. So if you were seeing a band, and I know that you'd get a number of different acts on, it's something that you would then go to the bar, or you'd go out.
Anything like that, I wouldn't. If they said, "Oh, we're going to go see," if my wife turned around and said, "We're going to go to Rainers and watch," going, "What? Really? Get your mates and go yourself." Nah, not for me. And it was like that for a lot of fishermen because we was macho. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's how it's always been, as far as I'm concerned. And I know it's an entertainment. I don't like watching it on telly. You know, turn that bloody thing off. You know that. And nah, not me. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was thinking, should we have a look through the photos that you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get them off.
I've been trying to find that one of Blakey. You'd love it. Honestly. You're right, take your time. There he is. Right, watch this.
I'll pause this. Part 2 recording with Jerry Thompson. So we're just looking at the photos.
Yeah.
Which one will we just...
There was one with the Challenge Cup, wasn't there? That's Pam Stone. I was fighting to death of her. She was with a guy called Eric Tan, and he was a drinker all his life, and he lasted a long time, did Eric. He was a very nice guy. But Pam, she was notorious on Ezel Road. She would fight with fishermen. She was a hard woman. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, she's beautiful and all. Let's have a look.
Somebody mentioned that she went in a fishing boat.
I don't think it was Pam.
Oh,
no.
Right, okay.
There was 3 women who stowed away on the, I think it was the St Crispin. I'm not saying, I've got the newspaper thing. And 3 of them stowed away, and the skipper found out. And would you believe there was jailed when they came home? Yeah, there was jailed, and Eric Tan was on the ship and all at the time. There was a few crew became well known, shall we say, in the fishing community who stowed these women away. One of them was already pregnant. 2 of them were sisters. But yeah, that's Pam Stone. That's barmaids. I don't actually know their name. Who's that? Chris from Rainers.
Would that be like an Easter bonnet, or is it the pram race?
Yeah.
You think? Easter bonnet.
Yeah, it looks like it, doesn't it? They used to have them every year. There's the barmaids in Rainers at one time. It was a women's sort of place, wasn't it? There's that Clarice, Later Life. That's
Is that Flo?
Flo, yeah, Flo. I mean, that's the Easter bonnet, definitely.
Yeah, so talk me through the Easter bonnets. Was that?
Yeah, well, it looks as though she's got a black and white top on, you know, for Hull FC.
Yeah.
So she was a lovely woman. She used to go through a lot just to get her hair done. Imagine doing that every day. How do you sleep with that?
And did everybody wear the Easter bonnet, or was that like and go out at Easter? Was
Yeah, every pub had every pub. There she is again in Rainers. Absolutely beautiful woman. some of these I can't. Now then, that has to be the Challenge Cup when when Rovers beat Hull in, I think it was 1985. You can look at your records for that. So it did a round of the pubs, the trophy. That is the actual.
And was there a lot of competition between Rovers and?
Oh yeah, there still is today. Camaraderie.
Camaraderie, yeah. That's a good word.
Yeah. We had somebody in yesterday. She said she was born on the east side of the city. I went, oh really? You know, and they know straight away what you're talking about. Oh no. She said, my dad was a left sea. It used to be like that at sea. On a weekend, you used to ask the radio operator, can you get us the results of the rugby and all like that? Because it was a big thing. And I would hate to think how many former trawlermen's ashes are scattered on the boulevard. And then all of a sudden, they moved to the new KC Stadium. I do know people used to be allowed on the pitch. You know, it was a mass thing. A final whistle, everybody used to run onto, and I know people have had their own little ceremonies scattering their dads, your uncles and mothers' ashes on that sacred ground, and now it's, you know, it's a shame that it had to come to that. But yeah, the barmaids, there was a big part of our. I was talking to Margaret lately, and she said she used to get more tips than she did wages. Imagine that in a pub.
Yeah.
You know, you got £1,000 there. You could have a night out on £10. You've got £1,000 after being away 10 weeks, and it was not. You know, every time you went to the bar, get us around in, get you send one. And she told me, she said she used to pick up more money, tips, than wages for working in there, and that's how it was. Yeah, there was a good part of the community, and. She's a darling, isn't she? Yeah, if you spoke to her, she had us.
I haven't.
Oh, you what? She's coming this Thursday to our Fisherman's Day. We had her in there last week, and she had us in tears. She's dry, you know, the dry sense of humour. She's been there and done that. She's a hive of information. You know, there's nothing she hasn't seen. You know, and. I remember a guy who I worked with on the dock. He went missing for a while. So I went in this pub on Springbank. I said, "You seen out of my mate, so and so?" And the barman went, "He's not down there, so I don't know where he is." So I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, he's usually in a heap down there." Yeah. He's dead now. Died of alcohol.
You know, you mentioned like Benidorm and things. What made a night out on Hessel Road different, would you say, to a night out elsewhere? Or is there a similarity? Like, have you been out in other places, say, in the country that have been similar? Yeah,
well, it is the difference. You know, I can go in town now, in moderation or all like that, and the pub can be full, and you won't know anybody. Everybody's strangers. When you walked in a pub on Hessel Road, you knew 90% of the people. There was always conversation. There was always, you know, 9 times out of 10, you've got to appreciate that there was that bigger percentage of family in every pub. You know, because like the hawkers, the old married fishermen, and, you know, you'd go in and you'd have a relation in a pub. Because it was a community within a city. That's what it was. And if I walk in Rainers now, I'll know more people than I don't know. But if I go in town, it's different. It's different depending on what pubs you go in. You can go in a pub and not see anybody from the sort of community, the industry. And you've got to appreciate, I've done this for 12 years, besides being in the community as well. But in a pub, and you know, you've got to appreciate and all now that we're losing them every week. You know, we've lost a lot, and in 20 years' time, there won't be no true fishermen left in this city. I'll tell you, who can honestly say they've been on a trawler and been in the community. So that is the difference between on them sort of nights out. that you could go out and you was guaranteed to have a good night with family and friends, and that was the part of the love of the community, that no matter what table you went and sat at or where you stood at the bar, you knew somebody. It was a part of a club, shall we say, you know, where all members knew each other. And you didn't, you know, growing up and leaving school and going in a pub for so many months, you got to know everybody and the bar staff. And, you know, I was talking to one of these bar staff, and she says, "Oh," I said, "You know, I bet you've seen some stuff in your time in pubs." She said, "Oh, we used to get the telephone call, he's billing." No, he's not here. Well, he stood in front of her. And she says one day she got some flowers arrived for somebody in the pub, and it was from a guy who was sat there with his wife to another woman in the pub. And this happened, you see. This happened. And that's the difference. You know, I can go in town sometimes and go in moderation, you don't see anybody. On Sunday, there was loads. You know, we've all been to this service for the Merchant Navy. And when we have our fish, we don't have them often now because we've lost that many people, but since we've been going 12 years, we came up the first year, we said, right, we're going to have a fisherman's reunion in Rainers, and it was a Saturday, bank holiday Saturday, and when I arrived, I walked in Rainers, and I was stood in the middle of Rainers, and I turned round like that, 360, I looked around and I thought, wow, have I really created this? The place was full of everybody who you knew, you know, fishing, who was still alive. And we don't have them so often now. We'll hopefully get one in August bank holiday this year, and to see if, you know, they're not very well attended now because there's nobody left. And that's the trouble, you know.
Yeah, just to finish, I was thinking, obviously Rainers comes up an awful lot in conversation. What do you think's special about it for you?
It's the Holy Grail of Old Trollerman. You know, it's the pub, it's the memories of the place. Everything revolved around Rainers. I don't know if for the record books it was the longest bar in all of Yorkshire or whatever at one time, but everybody, you know, through the ages used the place. I have heard of a couple of Icelandic fishermen who landed in the city once, was in Rainers, and they asked for a taxi, and when they got in the taxi they wanted to go to St Andrew's Club, which was 8 yards across the road. That really happened, that. But I've, you know, as a young fisherman, I've got the memory of the disco in there. I never used to go in the bar a lot.
Why was that? Was that?
Well, the bar was for old men, you know. That's been like that for years, hasn't it? Where, you know, the couples used to go in what they called a snug, because it was snuggly. I don't know if that's right, but I used to be in the back room in the disco. But Rainers is a very special pub, and it always will be. There was about 10 years ago. There was saying it was going to close, and my focus was on making it a museum like we have sat in here now. That would have been made an ideal museum, you know, to what we've got now. And it's got premises above, and there's boxing ring up on the 3rd floor. I think they use the kids boxing used to go there. But it's a lovely place, and you know, you don't have to go far to, once you mention Rainers, because they call the guy who had it Mr. Rayner. And you know, it'll always be the same. St Andrew's Club, which is across the road, is a garage now. And as I say, a lot of the pubs along here, Raby Castle, all of them, they've all gone, you know, and it's a shame really, but there you go. Lion used to be a good pub. What a lot of fishermen used to use. D Street Club, that's houses now. Tim Brown's, it was a betting office and a pub together with a snooker hall upstairs, only one table, But it was nice. And, you know, we had the bingo, Big Langham bingo, that was near Rainers as well. Halfway. Subway Club used to be on the bank side there near the tunnel. That was a good club. And then, you know, it was like where I was born down Charles Street. There was that many pubs, you couldn't walk down the street and get drunk. You get drunk, but you wouldn't make it home because there was that many pubs. And Rainers is well famous for it. You don't have to go far in the world to mention Rainers.
Has it changed much to look at, like, in terms of...
Outside, no. Where the big window is on the corner used to be the door.
Okay.
Yeah, I've noticed that. And there's a arched window in here. That used to be the door for the bank, not the door you came through today. And that was the same with Rainers. But Dillinger, as I say, we're on about putting a etch, you know, like you get a picture what's etched in silver. We're on about putting a picture in there in the memory of him because he used it a lot, you know, to take a horse in there. But I did hear a story, as I say, it was the same day I heard the story that it was the first pub in England to take £1,000 in one day. And I have heard stories that when the trawlerman strike was on and all the ships was in port, they had rollies full of beer. You know, the old Brory horses used to deliver the beer by horse and cart. And they used to be stood outside, queuing up to deliver beer. There was that much going out of the place. It packed. She's a lovely lass, Rachel, who's got it. She has some events going on there, them drag queens and what have you, and she has some good artists. I do know they have mediums, you know, which I'm not a believer in, like, but yeah, it's...
Was that quite a relatively new thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm not happy with that, because I can do that. If I had an audience of people and I'd say, right, I've got somebody called George, because George, 80 years ago, was the name, or Edward. You know, you wouldn't say, oh, no, somebody called Colin, or whatever, you know, Blakey. But, you know, and then what you do is, I've read books about this. You get an audience of people gone, right, they've come to see if they can get in touch with their relation. Right, I've got somebody called Jane and George and Edward, and then you'll see somebody in the crowd, oh, that's how George. Then you'll see them, you go, and it's coming from over here. Right? So did you know, you got, is it your brother around, uncle? Yeah. And the past, of course the past, 80 years ago. Yeah, I'm not a believer in it. You know, you'll have to convince me. But, you know, there's one thing in common, they're all dead. And I have heard a story of this medium in America. I don't know if it was America or wherever. And obviously, you know, you're booking, you know, to book to see them. They've got this address. And she went and knocked on the door. She said, can you help me? My car's broken down. Can I use your phone, please? And she went in, she looked about and saw a couple of pictures on the wall, you know, of family. And, is that right? You've got family on the wall? Oh, did you? Yeah. You know, a researcher went and knocked on the door and said, my car's broke down. It happened. It happened in real life. They sussed it. You know what I mean? And that's, you know, I'm always cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
But brilliant, thank you so much.
Good.
That's really helpful.
I'm just wondering who's out there.